Okay. So if knights are if knight if warfare is now the preserve of the rich, okay, that means that those who engage in it are well, they can be pretty pleased with themselves. It's kind of the opposite of what happened in ancient Greece. Okay, when with the rise of the hoplite phalanx, the common man knew that he was sort of the backbone of the army, and so he could assert his rights back home in his home polis. But now, kind of the opposite thing happens, and that is that the cavalry becomes the backbone of the army, and it's the rich who are now the backbone of the army. They're the ones who are essential. And so the status of the rich kind of goes up, and the status of the infantry goes down. So these so-called knights become very pleased with themselves. They are conscious of their status as wealthy, professional, and essential warriors. And sort of they adopted a professional code, a code of mutual respect called chivalry. All right, and this the French word for horse is cheval, so we get chivalry. It's basically the horseman's code. Um, Now it's like nowadays chivalry means respect towards women and holding doors open for them, and pulling out the chair for them, and just in general being a classy guy. That is not what chivalry means at the beginning, though. Chivalry was a code of mutual respect. You might be fighting for different lords, but really you're all on team knight. You are all, it's just like, a member, like a professional hockey player might play for a team, but he is part of the National Hockey League Players Association. And, he can be traded at any point to another team, right? So there's a certain, you know, they will extend courtesies to each other, even as they compete against each other on the ice. And so that's what chivalry is at the beginning. It's essentially a code of honor among knights. You don't try to take unfair advantage of each other. Later on, and largely as a literary conceit, chivalry is all about rescuing damsels in distress and being courteous to women, and it is that sense of chivalry that we talk about today. But at the start, it's simply a knight's code. And it spreads largely through something called the tournament, again, which is essentially a fake war when no real war is available. At first, the tournament is simply a melee. Okay, you'd just be put onto different teams and you'd fight each other over a certain space. And obviously, you wouldn't try to kill each other. But sometimes that happened. So eventually, the tournament stopped being a melee and started to be a series of individual jousts, right? And that's what you see in the movie Knight's Tale, or if you go to medieval times in Lawrenceville. All right, you have individual knights charging at each other and trying to break their specially modified lances on each other's shields. But afterwards, and there's a winner, obviously, but afterwards, you might all sit down for a banquet and hear minstrels singing praises of knights, and, you're all on Team Knight and you feel good about yourselves. Okay, here is an example of a knight on horseback charging. He's in a saddle, he has stirrups, and he has a couched lance. Okay, his lance is underneath his arm. He's not throwing it overhand like in the Bayeux Tapestry. He's transferring the energy from the horse to the rider and then to the lance. And so, you don't want to get in the way of that. Just for good measure, he has a banner on the end of his lance, but it's not just a flagpole. Okay, this is a deadly weapon. All right. And then here are a couple more pictures. On the left, we have a knight Again, you see he's got a coat of mail. He's got spurs on the backs of his heels to help direct his horse. He has a surcoat covering his mail. It's to keep the sun from heating up his mail too much, but you can embroider your personal emblem on your coat of arms, which is what, I mean, that's what it is, a coat of arms. It's a coat you put over, which again you put on your personal identification. He has a lance there as well. It's got some banners on it. He also has a sword. Okay, so you use your lance at first, and then if you break it or you lose it, you pull out your sword and you continue to fight from horseback. Now, if you fall off your horse, you continue to fight on foot. Knights were expected to be able to do that, and that's what we see on the right there. We also see that the knights are dressed in plate armor. This is a technical advance that happens by the late Middle Ages. No longer do you have a coat of mail, which of course is essentially interlocking rings. Okay, now you've got plate, which is more effective. All right, it's mail will stop an edged weapon, but a point might get through it, and obviously, a blunt weapon will certainly hurt. But plate armor provides better protection from all of those things. The trouble is that, again, it's even more expensive than mail, and it has to be made to order. I mean, it has to be. Mail can fit whatever body it goes over, but plate armor has to be made especially for you. All right, so this is the end of the second part.